Welcome to another edition of WVD Monthly, presented by XenTegra, with your host Andy Whiteside and Pete Downing, your source for all things Azure and Microsoft WVD.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of WVD Weekly. I'm Pete. I'm drawing a blank. That's what we're calling this thing, right?
Yep, that's what we're calling it. Actually WVD Monthly, because we do it monthly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's embarrassing, but hey, we're gonna roll with it. This is my third podcast of the day, so I'm a little burnt up. Plus all the other stuff I've been doing all day. How's it going?
It's good, man. Good, busy day. Actually spent the day showing off WVD and Azure today, so it's fitting that we're doing the podcast today. So.
What do you cover, just at a high level? What do you cover during those most recent workshops, and what kind of questions do people have?
Yeah, good question. So today I call it my Azure Fundamentals with EUC, and I focus mainly on Citrix, but the goal is to highlight the value of Microsoft Azure with the end user compute stack, and then how does it fit in with WVD? And so, more the questions I typically will get is like, how do I save money? Do I need Citrix? Do I need VMware? Et cetera. And typically it's, once the user gets to the end of the day, they're realizing there is a good fit for the lighthouse partners, which is Citrix, VMware, and a few others, but there is value to using them as front ends to WVD.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation. We have one of our sales guys who said a company that they're working with who's been successful with Citrix for years is considering to leave and go to LeoStream. And it's been 3 years since I've heard someone say something like that.
Yeah, and it's probably been more than 5 years since I heard LeoStream. So,
I mean, look, I know people are trying to save money. They're trying to do it cheaper. Maybe they've got some reason they're upset at Citrix, but the Microsoft story is getting better and better all the time. The bolt-ons like Citrix, like VMware, continue to add really good feature-rich enterprise worthiness for customers. Definitely something that we can talk through with them and help with. And look, we want to sell stuff, but at the same time, we can help you come to the right decision for you. That's the goal. Okay, so let's jump into our monthly concept here. What's the first thing we want to talk about as far as what Microsoft's done? This would be the December releases?
Yeah, they did updates in December and then conveniently launch them in January, which the date on it was January 6th. So they announced all the new fixes. So yeah, December updates.
What's first on their list of things they've added to the product or fixed? Sometimes it's it's fixed, it's tweaked. What's the first one? Yeah,
so the first one's interesting. A lot of people have been asking for this. It's what's called Azure Monitor for Windows Virtual Desktop, and it's essentially having dashboards in front of WVD, and using Azure Monitor workbooks, and essentially creating little dashboards and snippets into the environment, things like logon, utilization, heartbeats, the last heartbeat a session made. So is the device communicating with the edge? How many sessions are new sessions allowed? Are they not allowed? So it's just an overview and insight into the WVD, and it's a long time coming. But then it begs the question, why do you need these third-party partners? And so you could kind of play both sides of the fence. Natively it's built, but it still costs money. So when you turn all this stuff on, you're still spending dollars, and that's, I think, what you have to you have to weigh. And so is it native, and then native versus cost? So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these features play into the partner ecosystem.
And my joke here is it sounds like Citrix Edge Site, and that's not true by any means. But, these are all things that Citrix and VMware and others have been kind of tweaking and honing and getting better at all these years. And I'm sure this is a great first step and a good solution, maybe good enough solution. Just I guess the customer needs to try it and see if it gives them what they need, or if they need to continue to add things like Control Up, which Control Up's one of the WVD partners, right?
Yeah, and Control Up, Sapago, there's a lot of great partners out there. and so it's going to be interesting to see. Is it? Yeah, I'll say this, and is it as sexy as like a Sepago or Control Up? No, it's not. Does it get the job done? Yeah, it does. And, so it gives you insight into your, pool health, in troubleshoot issues with deployment, user-friendly feedback, as far as diagnosing feedback from user data, things like that. But is it as sexy as some of the partners? No. So,
well, you hit on the one that, has been the Achilles heel for all these years, slow logins, right?
Yep.
And if it can do that, that's one step in the right direction, no doubt.
Yeah. So,
right.
It's, again, they're slowly pegging away their to-do list, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I would love to see the to-do list. I wonder if there actually is a to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I would love to get a peek at that and see what's on it. Okay, so next one here is Azure Resource Manager template change. Sounds exciting. What is that?
So again, it's they changed the ARM template to default to not using public IPs. And when you create, basically they tweak the template. So when you create a template, so in our world, Andy, we call it a machine catalog. So the Citrix world, in the WVD world, they call it a host pool. So that the host pool has a standard template and it defaults to specific settings. And they defaulted to public IPs off now. And they encourage you to use, either a jump box or Bastion. So that's, kind of how I read this change. And essentially the template is the flow you go through when you do a provision, like a host pool. So, not a big sexy change, but something that's needed and focused on security if you want to get down to the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I've played with Azure some. I've started playing with it more recently. So a template, you spin up from these templates, and by default, the public IP capabilities are either not there or turned off. Is that true?
Yeah, it's turned off now. So my last demo actually I gave, it was turned off by default, which is kind of cool because I actually prefer to use the Bastion method, which is connecting to a VM with HTTPS. So when you do a host pool provisioning, part of the provisioning is you name it, you say what kind of pool it's going to be, and then you say, do you want to deploy some virtual machines? And then that provisioning engine of provisioning the virtual machines, it says, do you want a public IP, yes or no? Yeah. And it used to be defaulted on if memory serves me right. Now it's defaulted off. So,
okay. All right. So easily still controllable, but erroring on the side of security.
Yeah. And again, security, right?
Yeah. All right. Next section here, and I'm excited about this and don't know a whole lot about it other than listening to you guys talk, and that's MSIX app attach. Is this finally the answer for containerizing applications after a decade plus of things coming and going?
I mean, if we're going to be honest, I would say not yet. I would say we still got to kind of step back and wait and see, because it's still public preview. Now, there's two layers to MSIX. There's MSIX, the format. And so think of that as the new MSI, the new installer. And then there's MSIX app attach, which is taking this container and attaching them on the fly. So app layering, right? But the issue here is it's always been kind of behind the scenes, and you did it through PowerShell. Now it's done through the UI. And so, you package the application in an MSIX image, and then you upload that image to a share, and then the share essentially is accessible from the session host, and it mounts it on the fly. So very similar, like FS Logics, if you will, right? And there's plenty of tools out there, by the way, that help with creating this package.
It mounts it with links into a virtual disk. Is it a virtual disk? Is the MSIX basically in a virtual disk of some type?
No, it's stored in a VHDX, and then you can expand it, contract it. And the really cool thing is, I'll put a link in the podcast summary. They actually have a bunch of example MSIX packages, which is kind of cool. So, on the little page here that they highlight this feature. So I'm actually excited to try it out, because it's the first time where, I kind of strayed away from it because it was PowerShell-y, and not that I don't like PowerShell, but it's just not demo friendly. So it was like, now I can demo it and show it off and say, yeah, it works, so I'm kind of excited that it's in the UI now and I can actually show it off and actually push the limits to say, does it work or doesn't it?
This isn't limited to WVD. This is pervasive across all virtual technologies and maybe even physical technologies, right?
Yeah. So I actually, 2 weeks ago had Rob Shaw on from the global black belt team, and someone actually asked that. And unfortunately right now, app attach is only going to be tied into and supported in WVD right now. So I guess leg up for one of our other friendly partners, Liquidware, right? So it's still going to be the app attach piece will be locked to WVD. It's to be seen if they'll let it go on-prem to be used with like Citrix or VMware, or et cetera. But right now it's a WVD only feature. So
I'm a pro Microsoft guy. I'm not anti-Microsoft by any means, but in this WVD world, whether it's multi-session OS, Windows 10, whether it's now MSIX, they do seem to stack the cards in their favor, don't they?
Oh yeah, always.
That the whole lawsuit in Europe and anti-competition stuff, I guess that's all way behind us now, and I guess
yeah.
It seems like in Azure they can do whatever they want and nobody can challenge it, I guess. But again, it's good for me, good for my business. I'm not anti-Microsoft. I'm okay with it, but I got to imagine some people, somewhere along the way, somebody's going to start calling that out again.
Yeah, and just for a friendly FYI to listeners, and again, I'll put this link in the summary. You have to fill out a form to get this turned on, so it's not just turned on by default. So it's a preview only mode, but you have to request it as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I did a podcast with Citrix this morning. We were talking about app protection type stuff.
Yep.
The next one you have on here is screen capture protection.
Yes. So I guess this is the RDP client catching up with Citrix. So now they have the ability to block the ability to screen capture. So if I have a session up on my desktop, you can't take like a tool like Snagit or the internal capturing tool for my Windows. I can't capture the screen. It would just be a black box. So very similar to the Citrix functionality. It just prevents users from taking screenshots and screen captures of the window. Now, what's not here is watermarking and things like that. So you could still take your phone and hold it up like that and take a picture, but it does prevent screen capturing. So.
Do you know how that works? I mean, how does it disables the capturing tool somehow? What is it? How does that work?
I don't know. I'm guessing if it somehow intercepts the, because everything's a pixel, so I'm guessing it just intercepts the pixels and fills it in with black. Again, if you and I knew that, we wouldn't be sitting here probably.
Yeah, it's like those old days when Janet Jackson, when you can take a picture of her and some big guy comes and bops you in the head because he saw you trying to do it. I use Janet Jackson as an example. It could be anybody you want to name. Probably dating myself there, but I guess it's something's looking out for the session, it sounds like. All right. Next line here is built-in roles. That doesn't sound all that exciting, but probably very important.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not exciting. They're just expanding the different types of roles for role-based administration. And actually, it's funny, when I saw this feature, I thought of a customer who I helped deploy. I can't say the customer name, but it would have benefited them if they had this. Instead, they had to get very convoluted with creating custom roles and things like that. So this is just more for role-based administration, and they've added a bunch of new like stub roles, if you will, to get more granular from a management perspective. And again, I'll put a link up. There's a whole list of them, and it's not too sexy, but hey, it's needed.
So what this means is within the world of Azure and the ARM world, they have a role for Windows Virtual Desktop Administrators that kind of gives you the default things you need to be the WVD guy. Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, and then it even goes deeper. Like, are they only allowed to do, the virtualization piece? Are they only allowed to look at insights? Are they only allowed to read and just see, like have read-only rights, so that it gets even granular? So,
cool. All right, next line item here is application group limit increase. What is that?
Yeah, that's not too sexy, but I'm sure everybody on this call has hit the CPU limit increase. I know you have, where you try to spin up a VM and it says you only have 10 virtual CPUs per subscription, similar to that. So, Azure has limitations in everything. So, for example, a resource group can only have 800 disks. You can get it increased, but you just have to submit a request. So this is just another example of a limit increase. They said you can only have 200 application groups. So in our world, Andy, that's delivery groups in the Citrix world. So think of it that way. So you can only have 200 application groups per Azure Active Directory.
Which if you have to have that many delivery groups, you have to question maybe the strategy, but I'm sure there are organizations that are pushing that.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if you have 200 app groups, man, there's something else going on.
And here's the one that shows up almost every time, which is, again, ties into my conversation with Citrix this morning. The client side of this just continues to keep rolling along. We don't have anything specifically called out here. I'm sure you can probably maybe go into some, but they noted improvements in the Mac OS, the Android, and of course the Windows WVD client. Anything specific you want to call out on any of those?
Yeah, I'm looking now. So there's an insider build for Windows, but nothing too crazy here. Just doing a quick scan. The one I always check, just because I'm always curious, is the web, because that's where a lot of people tend to default to. And again, there's they added support for better local microphone into the remote session. They improved 4K support. So they've been doing a lot of focused stuff in the HTML5 experience. The Windows client, there wasn't too much movement. And then just out of curiosity, I'll check the iOS. But they're again, nothing too crazy here. Support for some of the new released iPads and iPhones, and again, nothing crazy. So, but they're still making, I'll say baby steps in supporting the various clients, if you will.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Well, that gets us to the end. I appreciate you jumping on here. We do it once a month. Hopefully people are getting value out of this, kind of a no nonsense recap of what's going on. Anything around WVD or specifically around Pete and XenTegra you want to highlight before we jump off?
I think two things. One, anybody listening, definitely, if you're going to pilot WVD, reach out to us before you do, because there's incentives to help you guys subsidize your costs getting WVD deployed and piloted. But also, if you're looking to deploy it, there's incentives to help get it deployed as well. So definitely check it out. It's called Microsoft AMP program, and it allows you to get funds to help us, a partner, help you get it deployed and not have to spend dollars out of your pocket and subsidize the cost a little bit. Other than that, I think WVD is making a lot of strides in traction, and it's going to be interesting to see where we are a year from now. It's amazing to see where they've come in a year, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Are we going to get to go to Ignite this year and get a bunch of people together and celebrate WVD, or is that still to be determined?
Last I checked, it's still TBD. I haven't seen a definitive date yet, and I haven't seen, and I just put my name on the list to get notified when they finalize the date. So hopefully it's in person. But if it's not, we'll have to figure something out.
And I'll use that moment to give a little sales pitch here, right? If you're a Citrix customer, if you're a Microsoft customer, if you're a VMware customer, if you're all three and more, and you want to go to these conferences every year, XenTegra is committed to reinvesting back into our customer base. So if you're out there listening and you want to attend these conferences when they get back to having them, I know a guy who owns a company that will spend the money to make sure you get there with us, and we throw a big party and we learn at the same time.
Yeah, it's a good time, and it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. All right, well, I appreciate you joining, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, thanks, Andy.
Thank you for listening to another edition of WVD Monthly, presented by XenTegra, with your host Andy Whiteside and Pete Downing. Thanks to podcast episode guests. Podcast produced by Pete Downing. If you are interested in joining a XenTegra podcast, email info@xentegra.com. Podcast copyrighted by XenTegra, LLC.